What's most valuable and best sacrificed? Well, how about you? How about your child? Christ offers himself to God so completely that his faith and trust in the world is not broken by betrayal, torture, or death. That's the model for the honorable man. Something valuable given up ensures future prosperity. Something valuable sacrificed pleases the Lord. What's most valuable and best sacrificed? Well, obviously that depends on the culture and the time. What is at least emblematic of that? A choice cut of meat. Well, if you're a herdsman, for example, that's a big deal. What's above even that? Well, in terms of the thing you could sacrifice, well, your best animal, that's good. Well, how about you? How about your child? How about you? Well, that would be next on the hierarchy. It's kind of hard to get past that, right? And I think it's a toss-up. Mary answers yes voluntarily. Mary is the archetype of the woman who answers yes to life voluntarily. That's what that image means. She knows what's going to happen. And so she's the archetypal representation of the woman who says yes to life, knowing full well what life is, not naive, but consciously knowing what's to come. And then also allows it to happen, because that's another thing that's a testament to the courage of mothers. So, mother, that says this, the mother is the person who also says, get out there, take your goddamn lumps, because you're tough enough so that you can handle it. In turn, Mary's son, Christ, offers himself to God so completely that his faith and trust in the world is not broken by betrayal, torture, or death. That's the model for the honorable man. The greatest of all possible sacrifices is self and child. Of that there can be no doubt. Pain and suffering define the world. Of that equally there can be no doubt. The person who wants to alleviate suffering, who wants to bring about the best of all possible futures, who wants to create heaven on earth, will therefore sacrifice everything he has to God, to life in the truth. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Now, this is after Adam and Eve have been chased out of the Garden of Eden, right? So I really think that the Cain and Abel story is the most profound story I've ever read. Adam and Eve are not the first two human beings. Cain and Abel are the first two human beings. Because Adam and Eve were made by God and they were born in paradise. So that's the first thing, and it's post-fall. We're out in the world, we're out in history now. We're not in some archetypal beyond, although we've already been thrown out of the garden. We're already self-conscious. We're already awake. We're already covered. We're already working. We're full-fledged human beings. And so, Cain and Abel. So what's cool is that humanity enters history at the end of the story of Adam and Eve, and then the archetypal patterns for human behavior are instantaneously presented. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. There's the first human being, Cain. And again, she bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And I think that's part of the critical issue here, because a shepherd will take care of sheep, and they're edible, and the lambs are very vulnerable. And there were lots of wild animals around. There were lions, and you had a slingshot or a stick or some damn thing, and so your job was to keep the sheep organized and not let them be eaten by the lions alone. And so you had to have a clue and be tough and self-reliant and all of those things. You had to be able to do it on your own. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. Okay, so he's participating in this sacrificial ritual. And Abel, he brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Now, you don't know why that is, and this is a built-in ambiguity, I think. Abel brought the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, he brought the high-quality sacrifice. You don't know that Abel's sacrifice is low quality. There isn't a sentence there that talks about how high-quality Cain's sacrifice is. But in any case, the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering. There's a hint that Abel's putting a little bit more into the whole sacrificial thing than Cain. But there's also a hint that maybe God is just liking you a little better than he's liking him. And that's, I think, useful from a literary perspective because there is that arbitrariness about life. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering. But unto Cain and his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, angry. Wroth, and his countenance fell. Well, to have your countenance fell, this is sort of up. To fall is to have it be heavy, depressed, resentful, that his hard work is being rejected by God. Now that's worth thinking about, really. Because you think about how human that story is, you know. You might be a useless character and, you know, you're whining about how catastrophic your life is, and it's pretty much obvious to everyone around you and you that it's your fault. You just don't try. You don't wake up in the morning, you don't get a job, you don't engage in things, you're cynical and you're bitter and you're angry, and you don't try to help the people near you, and you don't try to fix up your own life, and you don't take care of yourself, and, you know, and then things go wrong, and it's like, well, really, what do you expect? But that doesn't mean someone in that situation will just say, well, that's okay, I deserve it, and they'll be happy about it. They won't. They'll be absolutely bitter about it and angry. But, you know, put that aside for a moment. There are people who seem to struggle very forthrightly, let's say, and still have one catastrophe after another happen to them. And so there's no easy answer in this story. It's like you can fall afoul of God because your sacrifices are second rate, or you can just fall afoul of God and you don't know why. Well, tough luck for you. And then what happens in either case is exactly this, almost inevitably. Cain was wroth and his countenance fell. You know, you can have some sympathy for Cain. So it's not like you're Cain and you're Abel and you're Cain and you're Abel. It's like you're half and half and you're half and half and you're half and half. It's something like this. This is two different potential patterns of destiny. And you don't manifest one purely and the other zero. It's like, and Cain was very wroth and his countenance fell. Grateful, let's say, and inquiring. Grateful and inquiring posture. Because that's what a prayer for posture should be. It should be grateful and inquiring. And grateful is, thank God things aren't worse for me than they are. That's a humble inquiry. How could I make things better? It's something like that. And that's like, what sacrifices do I need to make in order to make things better? That's a good question to ask yourself. You could ask yourself that every morning. If you just have a miserable life, you're just going to suffer stupidly and get bitter about it. That's what happens to Cain. It's like, well, how about not doing that? How about making a sacrifice and seeing if you can please God and put being on track? And the Lord said unto Cain, why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. Now that's an interesting line, because God says to him, if you do well, won't you be accepted? Well, there's a hint there, right? It's something like, well, things aren't going so well for you, but you're not doing well. Well, does that mean you're not doing good? Does that not mean you're not acting properly? It means it's the hint. God is suggesting that if you were doing it properly, you would be successful. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. And if thou doest not well, then sin lies at your door. Well, so I looked at lots of translations for this, and actually the next line is, and unto thee shall be his desire. Yes. What God actually says is something like this, is like, you know, things aren't going so well for you, but if you were behaving properly, they would. But instead, this is what you've done. Sin came to your door, and sin means to, you know, pull your arrow back and to miss the target. Sin came to your door. But he uses a metaphor, and the metaphor is something like, sin came to your door like this sexually aroused cat, predator thing, and you invited it in first, and then you let it have its way with you. It's like you entered into a creative, he uses a sexual metaphor, you entered into a creative exchange with it and gave birth to something as a consequence, and that what you gave birth to, that's your life. And you knew it, but you're self-conscious after all. You knew you were doing this, and you conspired with this thing to produce the situation that you're in. But God's idea was, not only are you not doing well because you're not doing well, but you're not doing well because you've actually really spent a lot of work figuring out how to not do well. This is like creative effort on your part. Well, so Cain, he's obviously not very happy about this whole answer, obviously, because the last thing you want to hear if your life is turned into a catastrophe and you take God to task for creating a universe where that sort of thing was allowed, is that it's your own damn fault and you should straighten up and fly right, so to speak, and you shouldn't be complaining about the nature of being.